Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the worst basketball card designs for 1994. 1994 is an unusual year because it actually has a particular look. It's not that every single card looked the same, but almost all the cards did. It was really weird. Virtually the entire industry got rid of card borders and added gold foil or made sure there was gold foil on their cards. And the challenge when you do that is how do you distinguish one card from another? Because once you get rid of the borders, it's details inside the card or a general feel for how you select images that makes the cards feel different. And so with that many card companies all of a sudden doing the same thing, it can really run together. Football's where it really gets bad, but even in basketball, the difficulty for making these cards work is pretty strong. And so while there are some excellent card designs in 1994, there are a lot that are really bad, but there are also a lot in the middle that are just kind of, they're not distinct. And that's a big part of the problem with the 1994 cards. So here with this list, I have a bottom 5 and I have 2 honorable mentions. And the honorable mentions aren't bad cards. It's just that they're underwhelming cards. They're cards that fail to really do much and really carry much weight. So while the bottom 5 cards I think are all disappointments at best, the first 2 that I'm going to be looking at are nice enough cards, but like the first one here is SP Championship. And this is the retail version of SP. It's not a parallel, it's a completely separate standalone set. The thing about this card set, though, is that these cards are intended to be nice, fancy cards for people who don't want to spend SP money. It's supposed to be closer to Upper Deck money to allow for general collectors to be able to still have fun with getting high-end cards with a card that looks fancy but doesn't look expensive. And that's very much the case with this card. By having no border, you have to have elements inside the card that are distinctive, and the elements that are on this card are actually quite nice, but they're very difficult to notice them. They have that little team box, or not a box, but it's an oval for the team name with the team color in it, which is really nice if you can find it and look at it, but you got to find the thing. And then the logo for the set is a little garish, but overall not too bad. And then the elements that tie them together, it's all kind of lost on the card. I will give them credit for the fact that they did have a tendency to choose pretty good images for this card set, so that does help, but the elements inside that have a design component to it are hardly visible at all. So the card doesn't carry in any way. You got to look at the parallel, which is die cut, in order to see anything that stands out. Otherwise, this is a card that you've really got to give it time to look nice, and if you do, it's nice, but you've got to do all the heavy lifting. It's a little bit different with my other honorable mention, which is Jam Session. And this is both the biggest disappointment of Jam Session and the biggest height at the same time. So the 1993 Jam Session card is like the ultimate Jam Session card where it has all the things that you want. A bright image that has really good image selection, and then a design element that's very strong. All of this is great, especially with the brightness of the card. When you go over to 1995, this is a card that is trying too hard to be kind of pop-oriented, and it's designed around themes that fit more in a coloring book than they do in a card set. Both of these cards are very strong, they're very bright, and the image is very, very much forward on the card. When you shift over to 1994, the image tends to get lost in the card because it's a very, very dark card. That's the big problem that the card has. And as far as design elements go, well, 1995 is the strongest, 1993 is the cleanest, 1994 is the most understated because you just have those little lines on the side, and it can be difficult to even notice those lines at all. It's got to be about the image, and these images really are rich, luxurious images. They are great images in terms of if you take the time, again, if you take the time and you allow it, these cards can be much better than the 1993 cards, but they don't stand out. That's the thing. I ripped through so many boxes, I nearly completed all of the insert sets from boxes of this stuff that I opened because they were cheap, because nobody really bought them. And I remember when collecting them that they were forgettable. A few cards aren't too bad, like the Grant Hill rookie card, but past that, it just kind of runs together. The card set doesn't have anything distinctive, nothing that pops out. If it's in a display case, you're never going to see it. And that's the problem with both of these sets, is the cards are nice, they're well crafted, the images are well chosen, there's a lot of care that went into them, but neither of them are noticeable at all. And that leads us into the bottom 5. And the first one here at number 5 is our beginning into well, I shouldn't say the beginning into, but this is a great classic example of the problem with these borderless cards with gold foil, which is Ultra. And you can see with Ultra that the only thing on Ultra, I mean, there's the text for the player name, but it's just that logo. And the logo's stamped on. So while with SP Championship, there was some care put into some design features to make it kind of intriguing, with Ultra, it's just popped on there and there you go. That's what you got. That is the card. That's problematic, especially since while I think that they tried to select good images, I don't think they were very successful in making images that were clear, which means that on an individual basis, these cards don't really have much that pops out. When you put them in card sheets, they just all disappear, and there's not much to really see in any of the images. It's tough to make a full bleed card work. And with Ultra, while I think it's a very nice card in terms of it's got some elements that make it feel like, okay, yeah, this is supposed to be Ultra, it is not at all an inheritor of the spirit of 1992 or 1993 Ultra. 94 Ultra looks like a shift away from Ultra into something completely different. It really does have, I mean, on the back, okay, I can understand the back, but on the front, it just looks lost. And it's unfortunate. Of all of these sets in 1994, this might be the one card set that is the least intriguing, which is just a shame. I wish there was more to it. But yeah, that's the problem with 1994, is if you don't nail it, the cards just kind of flitter off into the ether. You don't notice them. One card you are going to notice is Stadium Club at number 4, because this is a mess. Now, what Stadium Club originally created in 1991 was a great starting point, and I like that. In 1992, I figured, okay, yeah, that's a decent transition. It's not an upgrade from 1991 to 1992. When you go to 1993 in baseball and in football and in hockey, I think Stadium Club was pretty strong, but by 1994, by the basketball release in 1993, things were already kind of falling off. They were getting playful, but by 1994, now they were getting into just a big hot mess. And I mean, the other sports also had a different kind of big hot mess, but in basketball especially, this is really weird. These cards look like some bizarre insert set. They don't, maybe a subset. But this is the set. This is the way the main cards are created for the set, and there's very little that is distinct on the card. And when you have busy images, everything just kind of runs together, and it really is an unfortunate case of, when I look at this card, I don't see a card design. And so I would love to actually put this further down the list, because in terms of a card design, this is easily the worst of the designs. But there is actually some interest to the images. I give them credit for that. The images are strong, although busy, and the gold foil has its own quirks that make it kind of, it gives some optimism to you, even though it's really confusing. So number 3 shows you kind of just how bad the bottom 3 are, because now we shift over to Finest, and this is a card that both should be further in the opposite direction. I should have already talked about it. And very much it should be where it's at, because I like the explosion of whatever that is that's exploding out. I like that. But that's the only thing I like about this card. Otherwise, my word, this is a bland, boring card. This is a card, that gray is just so dull, and it brings everything down, and the player's image is not bright at all. I mean, of all the Finest cards, this has to be the most dull card, period. We never had a card this dull over in football. In baseball, I don't remember there being a really dull card, but this one, for some reason, is just super dull. It's just this heavy gray feeling, but the image is also lost in it. So while I want to like it because of those streaks in the middle of the card that are very colorful, that's it. That's the only thing about this card. And yeah, I've got it at number 3 because, I mean, it is kind of clean. And down at the bottom, the name is, I like the name. The name is strong. Those elements are the only reason this is all the way up here at number 3. Well, that's not the only reason. Because when I shift over to number 2, now we're going to Collector's Choice. And Collector's Choice is the ultimate bland card. I mean, it's not even like this is a base level card. I've always felt this feels cheaper than that. It's supposed to be really taking advantage of the picture, but for some reason that white border, I've seen a lot of thin white borders around the outside of a card. For a Collector's Choice, I don't know why, but it has always stood out as this is cheap, this is cheap, this is cheap. And it probably comes down to the way that the player name and all of that information is treated on the card. It also might be the blocky logo. I don't know. But I have always looked at this card and just gone, why did you even bother? I mean, this was Upper Deck. This was supposed to be, obviously a cheap card for Upper Deck. That was the whole point. It was supposed to be for basic collectors who bought Topps, Fleer, Pro Set, those kinds of sets. It was supposed to be in that market, and yet it looks to me like Upper Deck was trying to dumb it down to justify the crowd. It's like talking down to somebody. That's really what this set feels like. And I'd love to have this at number 1, but 1, the images actually aren't too bad. But 2, I mean, you got to give it to Fleer. Wow, Fleer had a really good history of bad card designs. In the late 80s, they were actually pretty good at card designs, but that was about it. And by 1991, well, 90 was a terrible year. 91 in football was so-so. In baseball, it was really bad. 92, it was like they were figuring things out. And then in 1993, they were, for the most part, doing pretty well till they released basketball. And that one fell off. So by the time you get to 1994, well, here's what's interesting. They still did a good job with like football and basketball. I mean, what is wrong with this card? This card, when I look at it, I don't even think about 1981-82 Topps, and yet that is the only card this is similar to. In 81-82 Topps, you have that big explosion of team color that is way overpowering on the card. But I give them credit for the fact that the team color is what makes the card feel right. In this case, it is not the case at all. This card, whether it is team color or not team color, that foil is too overpowering. The flame doesn't feel like it goes with the card in any way. And the problem here with the white border that's different from Collector's Choice is now the border it makes no sense with the rest of the things in the card, which means the border is now a glaring element on the card. And that flame thing is not fused in with the rest of the card. It's a lot of foil, which is really tough to make work. This is a mess of things that all crash into each other. 1993 was a lousy card design for the Fleer basketball cards, but there's a cohesiveness to it where it actually kind of works together. It may be ugly, but at least it's a cohesive design. In 1994, it's not even that. And I have always, from when I collected these cards in 1994, I've always wondered what in the world was the idea behind this card. I mean, seriously, I don't get the design element on it, and that's why I have to have it at number 1 as the worst design of basketball, because it is an atrocious mess. It is screaming something, and I can't figure out what it's screaming. But I need to stop ranting on this. Fleer in the mid-90s was a set to rant on. It's easy to do, so I need to back off from that. So, this is my list of the worst basketball cards of 1994. Feel free to comment down below on your take on the list and if you feel that something should be added on to this list. And this is kicking off 1994, so I'll be picking up the other sports as I go along. So definitely look out for that. Do subscribe if you haven't done so. And thank you very much for watching.